Behold, this scroll without a name. Within it is recounted an as yet unfinished tale. If thy heart be drawn to its contents, take up the scroll and unfurl its aged parchment. I see thou art keen to know more. In that case, allow me to spin for thee a yarn. A tale spanning the history of the ninja. The story of a never-ending chain of battles.
Wait, you guys are still here?
You kinda just said, tortillas, anyone? And then you stared at a random direction for 4 months.
Yeah, so why didn't you leave? Are you guys fucking retarded?
Oh yeah? Well, maybe we are retarded.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you didn't think of it that way, did you?
No, I didn't. You really opened my eyes, man.
Ha! I showed him. Itachi? 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 Itachi, what's wrong?
So, what's the plot gonna be for this episode?
That's implying that the previous episodes actually had a plot.
Good point.
Fine by me.
Look, no one can understand a thing that comes out of your mouth, so why do you bother using it?
I don't know, because I'm funny?
Yeah, you're about as funny as...
Jiraiya's vagina. Hello, everyone.
Oh, Christ.
I will be your new sensei.
No.
My name is R.E.D.
No.
But you're not supposed to know my real name. My code name is Yamato, so call me Yamato. Forget about the R.E.D, okay? My name is Yamato. No, don't forget.
No.
Okay, what is the matter?
Yeah, what's the matter is your voice. What the fuck?
Oh, you want to talk? You sound like the gay cowboys.
Oh, you think I'm gay, huh? Okay, I will fuck Sakura right here, right now, just to prove I'm not gay. You! Drop your pants!
Wait, but I'm not Sakura.
Well, you're Sakura for today. Now drop your pants!
Alright. Masashi Kishimoto wants a couple of villains to go fight the non-main characters so they don't seem irrelevant. Cockzoo, who done diddly? It's your turn to die. I mean shine.
Alright, it's finally our turn to shine, Dun Diddley. Ho-ho! Oh my god, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Ho-ho! Ho-ho!
What the fuck? I must inform you that if we do not get to Sasuke on time,
Yeah, so that's what the plot is.
Orochimaru might take over his body, or worse, he'll make him watch Barney the dinosaur. Reruns.
But he can't get away with murder. Because murder is bad.
Sir Naruto's words echo throughout history as the most prominent words in our society. He has inspired countless generations to follow in his footsteps in search of the meaning of his famous words. He's quoted as saying, "He can't get away with murder, because murder is bad." I'm going to go fook myself now.
Hanging out like this again reminds me of the good old times we used to have, eh, Don Diddley? Oh. Dude, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Ho-ho.
You hold it right there, you villains!
Oh no, it's the police! Quick, Hoot Diddly! Hide the Cheeto dust! Good thinking! Here, I'll help! Oh, yes! It's a party! Whoa! Give me some more! Ooh! God damn it!
Naruto, what's wrong?
It's been 16 years since my dad went to the store to get some milk.
Kisame?
Yeah?
Why is there an old man on your sword?
I don't know.
Put him back.
Come on.
Put him back right now, Kisame.
Oh, come on, just let me keep him.
Put him back or we won't go to McDonald's.
You never let me have any fun. Hey, Tachi.
Fuck you, Kisame.
Alright everyone, gather around. I have devised a plan that will help us succeed in our mission. Okay, hear me out. First, we break into Orochimaru's lair. Second, we rape Sasuke. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a little question. Where in this bulletproof plan of yours do we rescue Sasuke?
We are supposed to rescue him. Okay, new plan, forget the old plan, new plan, okay. Hear me out. First, we break into Orochimaru's lair. Second, we rape Sasuke. Third, we regroup. Third, we regroup here and form a new plan to figure out how to Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, no more questions.
Ah, shit, he's black!
No.
Like?
Anal beads!
Good job, Hoot Diddly! Way to hit him with your ability!
Asuma-sensei! What happened?
I didn't want to be racist, so I lost.
Okay, I understand that, but why are you dying?
I don't know. Tell Shizune to take care of our child.
But you impregnated Kurenai!
Ah, shit. I mean, I know my aim's bad, but this is ridiculous.
It is time for me to use my special wood style technique that will allow me to change into anyone. Do you know how this technique works, Naruto?
You're asking me
Yes.
if I know how it works. I eat poop sometimes.
Asuma was a great man. You can truly find no better man than Asuma. His accomplishments were many and just. He can be seen here attempting to stop a man from ending his own life. He can also be seen here serving his country during the Cold War. And he can be seen here taking a selfie with Abraham Lincoln himself. Now, I can confirm that these photos are 100% legit. And to prove that, I've taken a selfie with Abraham Lincoln and Asuma. Yeah, that's me right there, sup. Asuma was an amazing man. And he will forever live on in our hearts as that gorilla-looking motherfucker. Amen.
Amen.
I have here with me a mixtape which the wise and honorable Asuma created to be played in the case of his death.
Yo, it's your boy Asuma. Back at it again with another rap. Here we go. Oh. Yo, you know who it is, this is Asuma. I fucked all your moms because I'm not gay. Yo, you know who it is? I sometimes suck dick, but not all the time, cause I'm not a faggot, like your dad. Yo, you know who it is? I like eating ass, but not as much as you, because you're all homos. Yo, I'm the real nigga. You faggots can't even fuck my ass, cause it's too straight for your gay ass. Yo.
That's enough of this shit.
Oh, Watcher,
sees souls, knows their pasts, and the souls see them back.
A dubious honor, inheriting a fortress both broken and cursed.
What is a god? A higher power? A rewarder of good deeds and punisher of the wicked?
The gods aren't real, but something else entirely. Something created by people.
And did you ever consider that these were things you were never meant to understand? That their comprehension is beyond you?
Let the world see. Let them decide what to do.
The wheel has turned again, Watcher. Come.
An aged dwarf shares this strange floating platform with you. His face is creased by so many wrinkles that his features lie buried amid shadowy pockets of skin. Still, the dwarf's well-practiced habits have left telltale tracks of a welcoming rictus across his visage. You can see his smile coming before it blooms, reshaping the dwarf's face from a hanging sack of flesh into something resembling an oddly carved, merry gourd, replete with unhealthy bumps and discolored splotches.
Sit. Please. Thank you for joining us, Watcher of Cadnua.
The gaunt woman seated at the table is clad in time-worn black armor that seems too massive for her to move in. A pale, slender neck rises from the gorget, topped by a hollow face. The milky skin stretched across it is delicate and translucent, like parchment that has been scraped clean too many times. She is preoccupied with the arrangement of cards on the table between you. With each movement, her armor squeaks and groans as though bearing an incredible weight. She places a final card, gives a nod of satisfaction, and raises her eyes to meet yours.
Your brush with the divine has drained you of your powers, fractured your memories. Look upon these cards. They represent the courses of your life. You alone know best how they flowed. Arrange them to fit what you remember. Does everything appear to be in order? Good. Welcome to the Beyond. I am Bareth. One half, anyway.
She points a finger in the direction of the dwarf who led you here. Though the movement is slight, her gauntlet squeaks like a rusty hinge. The dwarf's rictus returns as he nods in the woman's direction.
Tell me, do you remember when we last met? And though you could have broken your pledge when you defeated Theos at Sun and Shadow, you did not. Admirable.
She delicately places a card on the table. A bell in a tower. Her fingertips slowly drag away from the card, faintly creaking as they retreat across the table.
You had need of the gods once before. Now it seems we have need of you. The being that occupied Odnua's statue beneath your castle was the dead god, Aothus. Of this, we are certain. What we do not know is what his intentions are. Though Aothus stole a large fragment of your soul, you were strong enough to survive the onslaught and enter the in-between. You and he are still connected. He has chosen a body made of living Audra, perfused with the power of thousands of souls, including yours. It should be little difficulty for an experienced watcher to find him. No, but neither is your body truly alive. Your lungs draw breath, your heart pumps blood, but your flesh is as soulless as a hollowborn. That is, until I return you.
She delicately places a card upright on the table. The art depicts souls flowing out of a pillar of Audra.
Good. Before you return to Aora as my herald, you must remember who you were, the last whisper of life in death.
For a moment, the sockets of her eyes darken, leaving the pits of a death's head gazing out at you.
When you can picture your own face, the Beyond will lead you back to your own kind, to the world of mortals. Go forth now, Watcher, as my herald. Know that I do not give you this title lightly. When the time comes, you will have the power to reveal the souls that cling to you, to open the gateway from the in-between to the waking world. Find Aethys. Learn his plans. When I have cause to talk to you, I will summon you.
With a quick gesture of her hand, you feel a sharp pain in what would be your chest. The pain continues, intruding deeper into your soul. Looking down, you see a small lump of darkness roiling within you. The darkness lingers there, but the pain abates and fades entirely within the span of a few seconds.
A chime. Do not fear, Herald. It will not harm you unless you choose to cross me. I trust it will not come to that.
Her gauntleted hand gestures to the dwarf, hovering nearby. The dwarf nods, contorts his face with his odd smile, and gestures to a new door.
That's my fam, I'll hold them down forever. Us against the world, we can battle whoever. Together ain't no way we gon' fail. You know I got your back, just like a turtle shell. Nobody do it better. All my brothers tryna get some cheddar. We all wanna cut like the shredder. Me and my bros come together for the dough. Bought the orange Lamborghini, call it Michelangelo. With the nunchuck dough, and I'm pulling up slow. When we fall up in the party, they know anything goes. Check my Rolex, it say I'm the man of the hour. All this green in my pockets, you can call it turtle power. We fight together. Knock, knock, you about to get shell-shocked. We ride together. Knock, knock, you about to get shell-shocked. We fight together. Knock, knock, you about to get shell-shocked. We can run together. Knock, knock, you about to get shell-shocked. Ain't nothing that could come in between me and my brothers. We all around if it's going down. It's just us. All for one, yeah, you hearin' right. Our business done, we disappear into the night. Came up together, so we all down for the fight. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Family ain't nothing strong as that. And I'll be posted where the strong as that. Brothers by my side, city on my back. Real heroes, that's what the people want. They ain't born, gotta create them. Saying we gone soon as we save them. That's part of the plan. By my side, I'ma keep my brothers. Live or die, man, we need each other. We fight together. Knock, knock, you about to get shell-shocked. We ride together. Knock, knock, you about to get shell-shocked.
It is no secret that the Thalmor are planning to dominate Tamriel. They are the current governmental organization of the Third Aldmeri Dominion, the client states of Elsewhere, the Union of Valenwood, and of course the Somerset Isles. The Thalmor have been rapidly expanding the Dominion, taking over tons of territory, doing severe damage to the Empire during the Great War. They have been so aggressive that they took over parts of Hammerfell, although the Red Guards have done a great job at keeping them at bay. After fighting with the Empire, they struck a deal known as the White Gold Concord. There would be peace between the Aldmeri Dominion and the Empire, so long as the Empire outlawed Talos worship and the Thalmor gained free reign of their lands to go about on their own accord, searching and eradicating the worship of Talos wherever it was found. You would know that Talos is of great significance to the Empire if you've watched our lore videos, and if you haven't, we recently made a video on why the Empire will fail, which you should check out in the description below. It explains Talos pretty well, and of course, as the title suggests, why the Empire are screwed. But why do the Thalmor want to abolish Talos worship? Well, we've covered that too in another video we'll put in the description. In a nutshell though, the Thalmor want revenge against men for the conquering of themselves at the hands of a man, Tiber Septim. Considering the High Elves to be a master race above men, the Thalmor cringe at the idea that a man defeated them, as do they cringe at the thought of the same man who they hate being worshipped as a god. This is the superficial level of why the Thalmor want to get rid of Talos worship. Talos is Tiber Septim, and they're not fond of him, nor are they fond of the faction, the Empire, that the man conquered them with. So there are some basics here of why the Thalmor want to stop Talos worship, but does it go deeper? The answer is yes. There's two more layers, and the third layer is the one this video will be focusing on, and it's kind of a theory and kind of canon, but it's still pretty legit. But the second layer involves the relationship between the worship of gods and their influence over the universe. When a god, be it Aedra or Daedra, gains worship, it increases their power. We saw this in Oblivion, where the Mythic Dawn had strengthened the power of Mehrunes Dagon. The Thalmor therefore want to abolish Talos worship because it would damage the god himself. If Talos received no more worship, then the idea of him is also eradicated. By doing this, they erase his influence over the world, making him powerless. He would slowly be removed from the memories of all men and would kind of just disappear from the realm of thought. This will benefit the Thalmor even more. This is the justice they want, even though really it does involve harming the innocent men of new generations who have done nothing wrong to the Thalmor in their lifetimes. So far, this all makes sense, but what if I told you that the Thalmor had a bigger plan in regards to their domination? A third layer. A plan that doesn't just involve them sitting on the beaches of the Somerset Isles, drinking a tropical juice and nodding in satisfaction because they now rule the entire continent of Tamriel. No. This might not be the future the Thalmor aim towards at all. Perhaps there is a dark secret behind it all, and that is what I'm going to explain. This theory involves a concept known as the Towers, and it is considered canon by many people. However, because it is not explicitly in the games yet, it technically isn't. That said, there are some canon sources that obviously allude to it. For example, in the third Mythic Dawn commentaries, Mankar Cameron talks about these towers and how they touch the mantles of heaven, possessing the secrets of how mortals become makers and makers back to mortals. There's more reference of these mysterious towers in the Elder Scrolls novel by Gregory Keyes, known as the Infernal City. Prince Atribus Mead says that some people think the White Gold Tower and other towers around Tamriel hold up the world or something, that they think the towers protect mortals from an invasion from Oblivion. This sets some precedent for the whole towers thing I'm about to get into, but the main info, especially the stuff involving the Thalmor plan, comes from an out-of-game text called the Aldmeri Commentary on Talos, and another series of texts known as Numantia Intercept, which were written by the incredibly well-known former writer and designer for Bethesda, Michael Kirkbride. This is the guy that wrote huge amounts of the Elder Scrolls lore you know and love today, and his contributions to the games are of great significance. This is the reason why people still consider his writing to be legitimately canon in their head. He had future plans for the Elder Scrolls lore, some of those future plans were implemented in Skyrim, and it does make a lot of sense, considering that he is the source of so much of the crazy cool lore we talk about here on Fudge Muppet. But before I dive into it, just remember I must say as a disclaimer, Technically, we can't say this is all canon, as Kirkbride no longer works for Bethesda, but it's as close to canon as you can get for a theory. It's a fruity one, and very well could be the secret plan of the Thalmor. So the secret plan of the Thalmor is allegedly to control and deactivate what are known collectively as the Towers. These are actual structures, key points of significance located all around Tamriel that have a magical aspect to them, a power of creation and order. It is said that the Towers hold Tamriel together in its current state of physics and linear time. They stop it from falling apart into the disordered chaos of the Dawn era. According to the texts, the Thalmor, specifically elite leaders high up, want to gain control of these towers and use them to destabilize Tamriel and Mundus, causing it to revert back to a chaotic state in which the Outma will be freed from their mortal forms. Do remember that most High Elves and Thalmor members would have no idea about this plan if it were true. It would only be certain leaders and manipulators. It would be a very well-hidden motive. If this plan were to happen, the elves could revert back to free spirits and live immortally. This is because the Outma are kind of like fallen gods, as their ancestors are the Audmer, and according to the Aldmeri creation myth, they were once among the ranks of gods. Lorcan, who is considered a hero of men, tricked the other Aedra into creating Mundus. This trapped their descendants, the Audmer, who became mortals and eventually became the Outma. Now ripped from their divine state, they are searching for a way back. These towers can be destroyed physically or simply deactivated for the Thalmor to achieve their alleged goal. To deactivate them, you must destroy the tower or the stone which corresponds with the tower, or sever the link between the tower and its stone. Confusing stuff, I know, but because I like to make things simple, the most obvious example is the White Gold Tower and the gem located inside the Amulet of Kings. The Amulet of Kings gem is the stone for the White Gold Tower, and it is said that because the amulet was destroyed at the end of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, the tower was deactivated. Other people believe, however, that Akatosh's avatar at the Temple of the One reactivated it with its intervention. The prophecy of the Dragonborn from Alduin's Wall kind of suggests otherwise though, saying that in the Oblivion Crisis, the Dragonborn ruler loses his throne and the White Tower falls. Obviously not physically, of course. And as you will soon find out, not every stone actually has to be a physical stone. There are many of these towers within Tamriel that are said to hold the world together, but the White Gold Tower is meant to have the most creation power out of all of them. Created by the Aelids, the tower was built as a means of refocusing the powers of creation to reach divinity. But what are the other towers? And do the Thalmor have control of them? Well, there's actually one that would easily be under Thalmor control, known as Crystal-like Law, and I say would be under Thalmor control because the tower was actually destroyed. I'm talking about the Crystal Tower located in Alinor within the Somerset Isles. The Outma constructed it in ancient times, and the Thalmor were given control of it when the Daedra attacked in the Oblivion Crisis. But guess what? The Daedra was so successful that the tower ended up collapsing into the ground. If the elite of the Thalmor government plan on destroying the towers, then perhaps they were happy that the Daedra overpowered them and cast it to the floor. You could almost wonder, was the Crystal Tower an inside job? Its stone was said to be a person, which is pretty weird if you ask me, but either way, this is yet another tower that would definitely be deactivated. So what comes next? Well, there's also the tower known as Green Sap. This is said to be made up of a large network of Grat oak trees, all in which are planted with a fruit known as a perchance acorn. It is said to be the stone of the Green Sap Tower. It is unknown whether or not Green Sap is active or deactivated, but what we do know is that the Thalmor have control over the territory of Valenwood, which is where these Grat oak trees and therefore the tower reside. On a side note, I always feel so weird saying Grat oak. It's like I'm saying Great Oak with a really snobby accent. But anyways, one interesting thing to note is that while we don't know if the tower is active, we do know that the Grat Oak of Falanesti, which is a major hub of the Green Sap Tower, stopped moving in the late Third Era. Interesting. Another tower is known as the Orichalk Tower, and it was likely built from Orichalcum, or Orichalcum, however you would like to pronounce it. It was constructed on the lost continent of Yakuta by the Sinestral Elves, also known as the Left-Handed Elves. If you've watched our lore video on Yakuta, you would know that a Red Guard attempted to perform a magical sword stroke known as the Pankrato Sword, and shortly after, Yakuta sank into the ocean, the whole ancient continent, except for small pieces, with the tower therefore becoming being deactivated. Its stone was fittingly a sword. Perhaps it sank with the tower as well. It doesn't really matter anyway, as the tower would be deactivated nonetheless. So far this all bodes very well for the Thalmor. We've gone over 3 towers and all of them have very likely been deactivated. Well, how about the first tower to ever be created? Well, this one is actually still active, and it is Adamantia, also known as the Adamantine Tower or the Doreni Tower. Featuring in Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall, this tower was made on Balfiera, an island in the Iliac Bay. Legend has it that it's the oldest known structure in existence on the entire continent. This active tower was home to an event known as the Convention, which was a meeting held by Aedra outside of Orbic time. It's deep stuff, especially considering that the Convention is said to be the stone of the tower itself. Either way, this tower is still up and running, so no worries here. That's all we need to know. Moving on to the 6th tower, we find the Red Tower. This is actually just Red Mountain, the second tower that was created when Auriel and Trinomac killed Lorcan and shot his heart into Vardenfell. The heart of Lorcan became the stone, and Red Mountain grew around it, becoming the tower. Being the second tower to be created, the first being the Adamantine Tower, Mundus actually became stable. However, the Red Tower has been deactivated by the end of Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, as the Nerevarine destroyed the enchantments around the heart of Lorcan, after which the heart disappeared. Later on in the timeline, as we know, Red Mountain erupts, causing a lot of chaos. There's 2 towers left to go over. One of them is known as Walkbrass, aka the Brass Tower, aka the Numidium. This was the brass god the Dwemer created that Tiber Septim used to conquer and unite Tamriel. It was traded to him by the Tribunal so that Morrowind could remain autonomous from Cyrodiil. Its stone was originally the heart of Lorcan as well, but it was replaced by a kind of powerful soul gem known as the Mantella. Either way, the Numidium disappeared from the face of Tamriel during the events of Daggerfall after it was reactivated, and this resulted in the warp in the west, which changed everything. So with the Numidium completely disappeared, the Brass Tower is now not active either. And finally, we come to a tower known simply as Snowthroat. It is also known as the Snow Tower, and it is extremely widely assumed to be the throat of the world in Skyrim. We do not know if this tower is activated or not, but if we take another look to Alduin's Wall, it says the Snow Tower is sundered, kingless, and bleeding in the 4th era. Its stone is simply known as the Cave. Again, is this tower still active? I'm not sure. Either way, after adding all this up, we discover that out of the 8 towers we know of, and there could definitely be more, 4 of them are certainly deactivated. Only 1 of them is definitely active. This leaves 3 of which no one knows the current state. 1 lies in Thalmor territory, and there is no consensus on the other 2. So far, this doesn't look too good for the mortals of Tamriel, and if this theory holds true, then the Thalmor are putting all of Mundus at risk. As I said, this is because the towers are meant to keep the mortal plane stable and create the barrier that separates it from oblivion. Whenever a tower is no longer active, the barrier gradually corrodes even further. In the Thalmor text that Kirkbride wrote, it is said by the Thalmor that to kill man is to reach heaven from where we came. When we accomplish this, we can escape the mockery and long shame of the material prison. To achieve this goal, we must 1. Erase the upstart Talos from the mythic. His presence fortifies the wheel of the Convention and binds our souls to this plane. 2. Remove man not just from the world, but from the pattern of possibility, so that the very idea of them can be forgotten and thereby never again repeated. 3. With Talos and the sons of Talos removed, the dragon will become ours to unbind. The world of mortals will be over. The dragon will uncoil his hold on the stagnancy of linear time and move as a free serpent again, moving through the ether without measure or burden, spilling time along the innumerable roads we once traveled, and with that we will regain the mantle of the imperishable spirit. His text states that the Third Admiri Dominion of the 4th era ultimately aimed to return to immortality no matter what the cost. The towers are their cage, and they want to break free, Queen style, so they must remove men by destroying the idea of man, and to do so they have to get rid of Talos. Then they can also focus on deactivating all the towers. This would stop the cycle of death from existing entirely. Mundus would go back into its primeval state, and the laws of physics would no longer apply. Time, space, suffering, all these things would lose their meaning, and the elves would lose their mortal forms, probably becoming spirits once again. And there you have it, guys. This could very well be the truly deep secret plan of the Thalmor. I didn't think it could go this deep either, but there you go. The Elder Scrolls universe can be a strange place. Subscribe for more Elder Scrolls lore, and activate that like button if you want to stay in the mortal plane. Social media links are in the description if you happen to care. My name is Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.
Soon the Greybeards made known that they were restless. Already the storms had begun from their murmurs. The Greybeards were going to speak. The surrounding villages were abandoned as the people fled the coming blast. The villagers warned Talos to turn back, for he was marching to the mountain where the Greybeards dwelt. Inside he went, and on seeing him they removed their gags. When they spoke his name, the world shook. It is true that Talos did come to Cyrodiil, and it is true that a great storm preceded his arrival. From the lowliest peasant to the richest king, ambition is the ultimate tool. Mortals need something to reach for, some treasure just above their grasp. For many, that treasure is as simple as a roof over their heads, and a warm meal to feed their children. For others, those less burdened by the limitations of economic disparity, it may be a knighthood or a lordship, perhaps even a crown and a kingdom. But to one famous mortal, who would be sung about for the rest of time, ambition and achievement manifested in its highest possible form, ascension, apotheosis. Behold Tiber Septim, who walked the untrodden road to divinity and joined the 8 divines in godhood. He became immortalized as Talos. Hey guys, it's Drew the Daedrologist here, and welcome back to Fudge Muppet. I'm sure many of you know who Talos is. After all, there is a bit of commotion currently brewing in Skyrim, what with the war being waged largely in his name. And good luck visiting Dragon's Reach without Heimskir giving you an earful. But before there was Talos the god, the 9th member of the Divines, there was a mortal, and despite his popularity, it seems no one can agree on his origins. So it would seem that our task in this complete video on Tiber Septim is to discover the truth of his race and his history. Septim's no Cyrodiil from what I've heard. Though he rules their remnants and rebuilds their empire, he's something worse, or greater, depending on your disposition to the Center Sun. For the last 400 years, the petty kings of Cyrodiil have been squabbling over the title of Emperor, all claiming forbearance. The imperial throne's blood is thinner than a sea dream, and half as wet. You'd think that the ramblings of a drunken merchant in a Strosmakai tavern would be about as valuable as a beer-fueled belch, but in the case of Tobias at the Dragon Tail Inn, there's a lot of truth to his statement. Tiber Septim, though undoubtedly a man, is shrouded in as much mystery as the gods, even though he ruled the empire for 81 years, spanning the final years of the Second Era and the start of the Third Era. He goes by many names. Some call him Izmir, others call him Hjalti Earlybeard, Talos Stormcrown, or Tiber Septim. The most commonly accepted origin story for Tiber Septim claims that he hails from the frozen continent of Atmora, far to the north of Tamriel. Yet credible sources would contradict this idea. For example, the words of his trusted advisor and battle mage Zurin Arctus. Even Kain herself, the goddess of the elements, refers to Tiber Septim as a man-mer, and Bretons are the Tamrielic race with both human and elven ancestry. However, this is from a non-canon source by Michael Kirkbride. But perhaps this statement could be treated with some credibility, considering that he also wrote the in-game book Arcturian Heresy, from which a great deal of information about Tiber Septim's past is sourced. The ghost haunting Old Hroldan in the Reach mentions the high rock city of Alcair. This city is famous for being the birthplace of Tiber Septim. To make matters more confusing, Tiber Septim's avatar Wolf, who appeared to the Nerevarine in the 427th year of the Third Era, was an Imperial. And if Heimskir of Whiterun is to be believed, he was born a Nord, not an Atmoran, not a Breton, and not an Imperial. So what is he? How do we know so little about one of the most famous mortals in history? The earliest records of Tiber Septim speak of his early life spent in Skyrim among the Nords. This was before the Tiber Wars, before his conquest and capture of the Ruby Throne. The first edition of the Pocket Guide to the Empire features an ode to Talos, called the Song of Tiber Septim. The first line of the stanza reads, "He was born in Atmora as Talos, Stormcrown in the language of the ancient Elnafey, and it was from that shore he sailed. He spent his youth in Skyrim among the Nords. There he learned much from the tongues and their chieftains and their ways of war." Another source, written by the mysterious Underking, a name we'll hear more of later, speaks of Talos' prophetic origins. This source claims High King Wulfarth, who was present at the Battle of Red Mountain, was a Shezareen, an avatar of Shor. The Underking says that the Greybeards woke the ashes of Wulfarth and summoned him to High Hrothgar. There were rumours abound of the prophecy, one man who would defeat the elves and unite Tamriel. Naturally, Wulfgar thought he was the figure of this prophecy. He went directly to High Hrothgar to hear the Greybeards speak. When they did, Izmir was blasted to ash again. He was not the chosen one. The true chosen one was a warrior youth from High Rock, and this source, the Arcturian heresy, feeds into the notion that Tiber Septim was a Breton. Anyway, at around this time, the Cyrodiilic Empire was experiencing its final death throes. The Riemann dynasty was long dead, and the Akaviri potentates had worn out their welcome. The interregnum endured for 5 centuries. Racial alliances, small kingdoms and petty states formed and broke as frequently as young lovers. The only thing the inhabitants of Tamriel could come to a consensus on was that no one was fit to unite and rule in these unruly times. Many tried, but none succeeded. What occurred as a result of this was a general decline in living conditions across Tamriel Greater. In fact, some sources would suggest that the populace during the interregnum actually embraced a culture of anti-intellectualism. It's as if they reconciled with the turbulence Tamriel was experiencing during the absence of a true Cyrodiilic Empire. A series of stories titled Ancient Tales of Dwemer, written by the well-known playwright Gor Felim, using the Dwemer pseudonym Marabar Sul, gives us a good insight into Cyrodiilic culture during the interregnum. In Book 5, The Song of the Alchemists, a Dwemer king asks one of his alchemists to brew him a potion of invisibility, but the fool accidentally concocts a potion to fortify his intelligence. In the publisher's notes, Gor Felim writes, "The final joke that the stupid alchemist invents a potion to make himself smarter by pure accident would have appealed to the anti-intellectualism of audiences in the interregnum period, but would certainly be rejected by the Dwemer." Who better to comment on the contemporary culture of the time than a playwright popular among the common folk? With that slight digression, I think it's fair to say the heartland of Cyrodiil, as well as Tamriel as a whole, was desperate for a powerful leader, one who could dispel the incessant squabbling and quarrelling of petty lords, ambitious generals, and volatile vagabonds. It seemed like this need would finally be realised when one particular petty Colovian king, named Culhwch, chose to look north for the man to lead his legions in war. He heard stories of Talos Stormcrown, and appointed the young man as his general. General Talos had studied in Skyrim, and used the Fum. He could rout armies with his battle cry, and shout lesser men off their feet. You can see why these rumours were appealing to Culhwch. The Western Reach was at war. Culhwch, the king of Falkreath in western Cyrodiil, was in a bad situation. To make any bid at unifying the Colovian estates, he needed to secure his northern border, where the Nords and Reachmen had been fighting for centuries. He allied with Skyrim at the Battle of Old Hroldan. Leading his forces was Hjalti Earlybeard. Hjalti was from the island kingdom of Alcair, in High Rock, and would become Tiber Septim. Once again, the Underking is explicit when stating Septim's origins. Talos, or Hjalti Earlybeard as he was more commonly referred to before his deeds at Old Hroldan, had been given his first military test in Culhwch's service. He would lead the invasion of Old Hroldan, hoping to take the Reach from the Witchmen of High Rock. At this point, it's worth noting that the Reach was not always a part of Skyrim, just as Falkreath was once a Colovian estate. It was Tiber Septim who created the Nordic hold of the Reach, and this all began with his first military conquest. Hjalti was a shrewd tactician, and his small band of Colovian troops and Nord berserkers broke the Reachman line, forcing them back beyond the gates of Old Hroldan. A siege seemed impossible, as Hjalti could expect no reinforcements from Falkreath. That night a storm came and visited Hjalti's camp. It spoke with him in his tent. At dawn, Hjalti went up to the gates, and the storm followed just above his head. Arrows could not penetrate the winds around him. He shouted down the walls of Old Hroldan, and his men poured in. After their victory, the Nords called Hjalti Talos, or Storm Crown. This was Talos Stormcrown's first major military victory, and word of his might spread faster than the impenetrable winds he unleashed on the Reachmen. And in the wake of the storm, General Talos led Culacane's Colovians and Nords on one of Tamriel's most renowned conquests. The series of conflicts following Old Hroldan would be called the Tiber Wars, and would wage on for 44 bloody years. In response to Hjalti's deeds, Nord and Breton nobles in the Reach hastily formed an alliance, hoping to quell the threat of the ambitious Colovian king before it could get out of hand. They invaded northern Cyrodiil, and General Talos was forced to respond. Before departing south, he visited the Greybeards once more, and learned new powers of the voice. When he left, he could channel the secrets of the high peak winds, the roar of the winter blast, and the warm silk of the summer updrafts. General Talos and his hordes of Nords and Colovians met the rebel lords at the ruins of Sancretor. The alliance of nobles was swiftly crushed. This battle was more of a sacking, as Nordic generals flocked to join Hjalti after witnessing his power. Within a year, Culacane, Talos and their legions had conquered all of West Cyrodiil, bringing the bickering Colovian lords under control. Naturally, the rest of Cyrodiil followed shortly after, and with the Nibene taken, Culacane finally had control of the Imperial City. And with the White Gold Tower as his new seat of power, he was ready to be crowned and officially turn his expanding kingdom into a full-fledged empire. It was the 854th year of the Second Era, and just as he was about to be crowned, Culacane was assassinated. As you can imagine, this was incredibly controversial, and when General Talos was crowned emperor in his place, many were not willing to write it off as a coincidence. In the Arcturian heresy, the Underking once again offers an insight only one close to Tiber Septim could have. Before Culacane could be crowned, Hjalti secretly murdered him and his loyalist contingent. These assassinations were blamed on the enemies of Culacane, which for political reasons was still the Western Reach. Zurin Arctus, the Grand Battle Mage, then crowned Hjalti as Tiber Septim, new emperor of all Cyrodiil. This is when Hjalti Earlybeard, aka General Talos, officially took the name Tiber Septim, a Cyrodiilic name to suit a Cyrodiilic ruler. As with much of Tiber Septim's story, we are comparing the histories recorded by the Pocket Guide to the Empire with the Arcturian heresy written by the Underking. And once again the sources contradict each other. The Pocket Guide supports Tiber Septim and assures his innocence in the assassination of Culacane. It says that the plot was actually carried out by a High Rock Nightblade, and Talos himself was almost killed in the process, for his throat was slit. The Underking speaks of Tiber's treason, while the Pocket Guide decorates him as a legendary hero. But from the smouldering ruin he came, one hand to his neck and with Culacane's crown in the other. The legions wept at the sight. His northern magic had saved him, but the voice that led them would be more silent from that night on. His word could no longer rout an army with a roar, but he could still command one with a whisper. He took for himself a Cyrodiilic name, Tiber Septim, and the Nordic name of kings, Ysmir, the Dragon of the North. And with those names he took too the red diamond crown of the Cyrodiils, and became their true emperor. Thus was born the Third Empire of Men. Whatever the truth of his rise to emperor may be, he was now the ruler of the Cyrodiilic Empire, and the Septim dynasty had begun. The Tiber Wars would not end for some time, as there was a great deal more land in Tamriel waiting to be seized. This is where we hear more from the elusive battle mage Zurin Arctus, who undoubtedly has some kind of connection to the Underking, the writer of the Arcturian heresy. Arctus was crucial to the following years of Tiber Septim's conquest. After taking the Ruby Throne, Tiber Septim focused most of his attention on local matters, aiming to keep the Colovian and Nibonese lords in check. Meanwhile, he sent his Grand Battle Mage Zurin Arctus to oversee the Septim Empire's expansion into the unconquered regions of Skyrim and High Rock. The Arcturian heresy, which assures Zurin Arctus and the Underking are not the same being, despite significant evidence to the contrary, claims that the Shezarene Wulfarth played a major part in Septim's foreign affairs. Before we continue Tiber's story, I'll quickly tackle this confusing area of lore, which is brimming with contradictions. Zurin Arctus was Tiber Septim's Grand Imperial Battle Mage, and arguably his primary advisor. Wulfharth is the aspect of Shor, or Lorkhan, who was sent away by the Greybeards. Both of these figures are tied to the name Underking, so for now, don't worry too much about who's who, as the end of their story will clear up most of the confusion. Anyway, with his ambassadors working on the lands to the north and west, the remaining Jarls of Skyrim and petty kings of High Rock soon bent the knee. Tiber Septim's next challenge would be a great one. This much is clear from the introduction to the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard. As the Empire of Tiber Septim swept through the kingdoms of Tamriel in a glorious bid for conquest, Septim was opposed on all sides, but never more fiercely than by Hammerfell, the ancestral home of the Redguards. Septim was granted a major windfall by the death of the hardened High King of Hammerfell, Fasad II. This weakened the province greatly, as the two factions, Crowns and Forebears, broke out in civil war in the midst of their imperial invasion. The Forebears signed a pact with the Empire, and from here it was only a matter of time before the more stubborn Crowns followed suit. Their conflict culminated in the Battle of Stros Mackay, before the inevitable imperial victory and their imposing of several provisional governors to rule as the Empire's vassals. Next came the Aldmeri realms, and the Underking advised Tiber Septim to prioritise Morrowind. The Emperor was unsure whether it would be wise to face the Tribunal, but heeding the prophecy of the Greybeards, he knew complete conquest of Tamriel was written in his fate. Eventually, after some initial skirmishes, both sides agreed to minimise bloodshed and come to a truce. This peace was most likely brokered by Zurin Arctus, who secured an important term in the agreement which would make the conquest of Somerset drastically easier. The initial plan was to send Arctus to negotiate with the High King of Alinor, but that all changed with the acquisition of the Numidium. Tiber Septim was now meddling with divine powers that wiped out the Dwemer and made gods of the Tribunal, and this changed the fate of Septim, Arctus, and Wulfharth all. Tiber Septim tasked Zurin Arctus with researching the Brass Tower, and the Battle Mage soon learned of its initial purpose, and what took place all those centuries ago beneath Red Mountain. Arctus created a powerful artifact called the Mantella. This giant green gem would function in a similar way to the heart of Lorkhan. You see, this Wulfharth we've been speaking of, who turned to ash and reformed again, is a Shezarene, an aspect of Shor, and Shor is the Nordic name for Lorkhan. Therefore, Arctus theorized that he could power his Mantella, and thus the Numidium, by sealing the life force of Wulfharth within the gem. Our identity crisis becomes confusing again, as letters that surfaced in Daggerfall once again allude to the fact that Zurin Arctus and the Underking are one and the same. As are Wulfharth and the Underking. One letter says, the Mantella was infused with the life force of Tiber Septim's Imperial Battle Mage, and with it, Septim crushed all who stood in his way. And another letter, written by the Underking himself, refers to Zurin Arctus in the first person. It reads, "Centuries ago, Tiber Septim ruled the land and forged an empire with great Numidium. The secret of Numidium's power lies in its heart, carried within the Mantella. It is the heart of Tiber Septim's battle mage. It is my heart. It is my Mantella. It is my totem. It belongs to me and to none other." So the artificial heart powering the Numidium is fueled by the life force of Wulfharth and Zurin Arctus, while the Arcturian heresy suggests it was only Wulfharth who powered the gem, and Arctus was killed by Wulfharth's dying breath, a roar that cleaved a gaping hole in the battle mage's chest. Whatever truly happened is uncertain, but we know that Tiber Septim emerged from it all with a functioning Numidium. His brass god lived, and his conquest would continue. Tiber Septim took the Somerset Isles with ease, a feat previously thought impossible. The Numidium did not work for long after though, as Wulfharth, the avatar of Shor, was not as powerful as the god himself, and because the ashes of Wulfharth and Zurin Arctus returned in the form of the undead lich-like being, the Underking. And this Underking destroyed the Numidium, blowing it to pieces. If the Arcturian heresy is to be believed, Tiber Septim's life story is not so romantic. His greatest feats were carried out by a Shezarene. He killed Kulakane to usurp the throne. He betrayed his grand battle mage, and took countless innocent lives in his long and gruesome conquest of Tamriel. The heresy says, Tiber Septim lived until he was 108, the richest man in history. All aspects of his early reign were rewritten. Still, there were conflicting reports of what really happened, and this is why there was such confusion over such questions as, why does Alcair claim to be the birthplace of Talos, while other sources say he came from Atmora? Why does Tiber Septim seem to be a different person after his first roaring conquests? Why does Tiber Septim betray his battle mage? Is the Mantella the heart of the battle mage, or is it the heart of Tiber Septim himself? But the Underking had good reasons to slander and defame Tiber Septim, so his story could be rejected. The common orthodoxy is the one featured in the Pocket Guide to the Empire, which paints the Atmoran Tiber Septim as a legendary hero, but the heresy posits some plausible alternatives. Tiber Septim reigned for 81 years, and he brought stability and prosperity to a broken empire. A brief history of the empire gives a good insight into the opinion of the populace. The Emperor Tiber reigned, a just, pious and glorious age, when justice was known to one and all, from serf to king. It reigned for a fortnight after, as if the land of Tamriel itself was weeping, and the Pocket Guide voices similar sentiments. Cyrodiil in the Third Empire is the young, vital embodiment of its ancient heritage. Internally, it has undergone an incredible restoration. Reconstruction of the ruined sections of the Imperial City is nearly complete. Roads and cities destroyed in the interregnum have been rebuilt. East and West are unified for the first time in 4 centuries. Cyrodiil's present stability and strength have not been seen since the Riemann dynasty. Indeed, they were both born under similar circumstances. A Westerner winning the Eastern throne, forging them both into the greatest power in Tamriel. No wonder the less savoury accounts of Tiber Septim's life are considered heresy. His greatness could not be disputed. But either way, taking the Numidium from the Dunmer and finding a way to power it changed the fate of Tiber Septim completely. He had interfered with celestial forces, and his immortalization in the religions of man was inevitable. Upon his death at age 108, Tiber Septim ascended to godhood, under his Nordic name Talos. The specific reason for this is somewhat ambiguous. The Numidium and the Mantella likely played a part, as did his connection to the Underking, Wulfharth Ashking, and Zurin Arctus. The warp in the west also seems to have played a part. But it is also possible that the 8 Divines simply accepted him based on his achievements alone. Tiber Septim is a bizarre individual in the Elder Scrolls universe. There is a wealth of information to read about him, yet there are countless contradictions, and major pieces missing from his biography. Various sources claim to know his darkest secrets, yet we can't even come to a consensus on his birthplace and identity. I guess that's part of the fun with Tiber Septim. Or should I say Talos, Hjalti Earlybeard, Izmir, Wolf? Am I missing any others? We could even delve into the true nature of the divine Talos. Is this deity simply Tiber Septim in a mortal form? Is he some kind of hybrid of Wulfharth, Zurin and Tiber Septim? To answer some of these questions, we would need to plunge headfirst into a rabbit hole so deep that we risk falling into Nirn's core. Tiber Septim may be the greatest man or man-mer to have ever lived. Men and elves will fight to the death over his worship, and even his staunchest worshippers couldn't tell you what race he was. But there you have it, guys. You have all the information you could want to draw your own conclusions. This was the story of Tiber Septim, the Greybeard's chosen one, the emperor who ruled with a whisper and united all of Tamriel. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Drew, and I'll see you in the next one.
In the first part of the review, we looked at the mechanics of Enderal and how they aided in telling Enderal's greater narrative and portrayed the world. Things like dialogue, combat, level design, and music are all critical features that help deliver Enderal's story in the best and most effective way. If you haven't seen that video, I would greatly appreciate it if you went and watched it before diving into this video, but it isn't necessary. But to get back on track, writing a story is no simple feat. A focus, themes, and creating an intriguing cast of supporting characters are just some of the fundamentals of a good story. And with a narrative to deliver as complex and philosophical as Enderal's, it becomes easy to get bogged down in the details, like I did when I first began writing this script. It's now my 9th rewrite. Though Enderal manages to avoid that, instead telling its story with a mixture of consistent, concise, and entertaining writing which I seek to explore. Before beginning, I would like to give everyone one last chance. In my last video, the spoiler card was nigh pointless, as there weren't any major spoilers. This time is different. T-Lore's story, Jaspar's, and the main story are all going to be spoiled. I will leave spoiler cards before moving in, but for now, you've been warned. Before beginning this review, I want to make a correction from my last video. When speaking on fast travel, I didn't mention the mark and recall spells. These are mentalism spells that allow a player to mark a position and, at any time, cast the recall spell to instantly be teleported back to that location. Thank you for commenter Captain Perfect for catching that error. The first thing I wish to touch on is something I see Enderall criticized quite a bit for, the narrative structure.
3 things. First, there were many civilizations before us and before the Marines. Maybe hundreds, maybe thousands. Second, the history of each civilization unfolded and still unfolds according to a pattern. They emerge, they blossom, and at some point, at the apex of their existence, they simply disappear without any trace. And third, everything that has happened in the past years, and which is still happening, indicates that this disappearance lies ahead of us. We are part of an eternal loop, a cycle, and our cycle is approaching its end.
Sound familiar?
Whatever your plan is, it's going to fail. I'll make sure of that.
Confidence born of ignorance. The cycle cannot be broken.
Cycle? What cycle?
The pattern has repeated itself more times than you can fathom. Organic civilizations rise, evolve, advance, and at the apex of their glory, they are extinguished. The Protheans were not the first. They did not create the Citadel. They did not forge the mass relays. They merely found them. The legacy of my kind.
Though this isn't a slight against Enderall's writers. This basic structure is almost biblical in nature, where the 4 horsemen come, bringing the apocalypse with them to destroy civilization. The only difference? The button is on repeat. I don't see the sharing of a similar base structure for a story as a bad thing, because in the end, Mass Effect and Enderall tell 2 very different stories. Mass Effect seeks to tell the story of the underdog, of unity, where cooperation and resilience refuse to give in to an overwhelming enemy. Enderall seeks to tell a story of the human condition, our ability to make up our own enemies, and our inability to perceive our own reality. When considered, the differences between the 2 become especially apparent. Neither is better than the other at telling the same story because they both tell different ones. Original narrative structures are extraordinarily difficult to come up with, and rarely come out well. Look for any story of a character outside the hero's journey. Look for stories that don't incorporate the 5-point structure. It's difficult to find. There's no need to fix something that isn't broken. The narrative structure is only a skeleton, a frame to build a broader narrative around, to place the actors within and lay the themes under. The narrative structure itself isn't the star of Enderall's story, but rather the smaller pieces that follow in its threads. The wiki states Enderall is broken into 5 acts: Prologue, A New Life, Traces of the Past, Our Salvation, and Black Light. As you could probably tell, it isn't my job to only reiterate the story of Enderall for you, so I won't. Instead, I plan to look at the major themes, characters, delivery, and other smaller items dispersed throughout. A quick clarification. The idea of themes and motifs are similar. though there is a small difference. Themes are the overarching ideas that guide the story and the core messages it seeks to convey. Motifs are the images, symbols, and/or ideas that help develop or present the theme. As such, I will introduce a theme and the motifs around that theme. Enderal deals profoundly with the idea of what is real and what is not. Hell, it's even stated in one of the closing lines of an opening cutscene.
Right, I know I'm not real. At least not according to your definition. I know damn well.
While certainly a weighty topic to convey, Enderal handles it with some tact, using important plot moments to punctuate this. This conciseness with one of the major themes is presented to us in one of the most prominent motifs used, dreams. I don't think it's much of a secret to say dreams are a concept heavily explored throughout Enderal. In the first hour of the game, we're hit with several cutscenes in which an exaggerated or vague perception of reality through dreams is portrayed. Even the first 5 minutes of the game begins in a summer's day dream, in which we're introduced with the idea that our perception of reality is warped. This not-so-subtle presentation of dreams is done in an incredibly eloquent way. I would be hard-pressed to say that someone playing through the intro of Enderal wouldn't understand the importance of dreams, and that isn't a bad thing. While this may be a side effect of me being a journalist where concise and clear language is a must, this is something I love about Enderal. Moments like the induction into the Holy Order in Silver Grove help to fully develop this theme of the perception of reality. And while I'd love to jump into the heart-wrenching tale of Silver Grove, I figure some people watching this have not yet played Enderal, and I'd like to keep that experience fresh. Therefore, and perhaps for the best, the induction into the Holy Order will be used as an example. To give just a little context, the player is brought before the Holy Order to join them because only they have the resources to stop the big baddies, the High Ones, and so on. So, the player is made to go through the usual ceremonial stuff to appease the more conservative members of the Holy Order. This ceremony culminates in the player drinking a potion which sends them into a dreamlike trance, wherein we discover perhaps the most concrete of ideas concerning perception of reality, Axion. Axion is an illusion, a person who exists in a place which in its entirety sums up the story of Enderal through subtle environmental hints. This is beautifully summed up by Say PN, who wrote a small Reddit thread on the analogy of the prison. Link in the description if you would like to read it. However, while that is a wonderful example of Enderal's intricate storytelling, we'll continue to focus on dreams. Axion is a metaphor for the player and many other characters encountered while in Enderal. He also speaks on the perceptions of reality.
If I told you that you and your friend Sirius actually lie dead at the bottom of the sea, and that everything that has happened so far, your journey to Ark, the search at the Sun Coast, was only a dream, would you be able to recognize the truth? The answer is no, because you don't want to be dead. Therefore, your mind will do anything to make you believe this entire dream you've had was and is reality.
To attempt to clear up what Axion just said, a person is unable to perceive reality because they have no basis to understand reality. This is a theme which is often explored by philosophers, and Axion's projections most closely resemble one of René Descartes' perceptions of a demon or oppressor which attempts to deceive others to their will. The following is a quote from Descartes' selected philosophical writings, translated by John Cottingham, Robert Stuthoff, and Dougald Murdoch. I am like a prisoner who is enjoying an imaginary freedom while asleep. As he begins to suspect he is asleep, he dreads of being woken up, and goes along with the pleasant illusion as long as he can. In the same way, I happily slide back into my old opinions and dread being shaken out of them, for fear that my peaceful sleep may be followed by hard labor when I wake, and that I shall have to toil not in the light, but amid the inextricable darkness of the problems I have now raised. And yes, while there are differences between the two philosophies, a line can be drawn connecting them. This conversation serves to further ingrain the player to the Holy Order's way of thinking, banking on the idea that the player will probably just assume that Axion is a whining illusion and the prison you're in is just another dungeon. It also provides wonderful foreshadowing for when your hindsight is 20/20. When looking at the main story of Enderall, the player is given several times to interact with the High Ones. Some are more forward than others, but a consistent message is projected across all of them, that we are weak and nothing we can do can stop them. While at first this may just sound like pretentious villain banter, I believe there is a deeper meaning behind their lines. The High Ones are physically incapable of manipulating the mortal realm. They can't pick up a rock and throw it. However, they are able to tamper with people mentally or emotionally. The High Ones never once came after you themselves. They never once dropped a building or blew up a still. They just egged your fears on. They came to you in dreams and illusions. They told you about how futile everything you were doing was, and at one point offered to answer any questions you had. And while they never technically lied to you, they were biased by exclusion. Though I am getting off track. The High Ones are never truly able to pose a threat. They simply take advantage of those whose conscience has already failed them. Anyone who had contracted, if you can even call it that, the Red Madness had a mental instability of their own, emotional or otherwise. Something pushed them to their breaking point. This can be seen perfectly in Yero's, a victim of the Red Madness, own diary.
The path condemns suicide as a crime because we all have a purpose in this world. But what is mine? I look ahead and I see 30 winters of solitude. I look back and I see nothing but a trail of broken dreams. Our food bank caused brawls and murder in the Undercity, and the rich forced the Trachessa to revoke the decree. So tell me, Malphas, is this my purpose? To fail? My thoughts are chaos and I'm too tired to continue writing.
Their fragile mentality allowed themselves to be taken advantage of. So it makes sense that the Red Madness is a perfect example of the fragility of consciousness. But what about the creation of our own enemy? After all, this affliction would imply that the High Ones are truly a threat and we do need to stop them, right? Well, kind of. Well, yes, they can actually affect other people and cause them to attack us. That's really all they can do. And all this is further explained in the Black Guardian cutscene.
But I do know one thing, as powerful as they might be, it is mankind who gives them that power. We make them into what they are, because what nobody understands is simply this. The High Ones feed on what humanity has the most of, their ego, greed, pride, fear, and their everlasting search for an enemy that was responsible for all their misery. It is those traits the High Ones make use of. These characteristics are what make us human. And by themselves, they are harmless. Only when we bury them, when we deny them, then they play into the High Ones' hands. So
they are, in their own right, completely unable to end the world. Yet that is what troubles the Holy Order, worrying about the harvest, and that stopping the High Ones must be the key to stopping the cycle from ending. Though this is never the case, as, massive spoiler alert, the creation and activation of the beacon is what truly causes the end of humanity. Both of these motifs beautifully illustrate the story of humanity and do an entertaining job of showing us our flaws through well-done storytelling. Besides, we've yet to touch on one of Enderall's most celebrated subjects: characters. In my last video, we loosely explored the dialogue of Enderall's characters. However, we didn't really explore any specific characters and took a broader view on things. Now, there is a whole host of characters we could explore, and many of the main and supporting characters are incredibly well done, and I would recommend playing Enderall just to experience them. However, I'd like to spend time on two in particular: Jaspar and Tilor Oranthiel. Both have two very different personalities and serve two very different purposes, but both do it equally as well. Telor Aranthiel was a character I initially passed over in my first playthrough. Yes, he was fascinating, and yes, he filled a role, but I never studied why he felt fascinating. Telor is your Admiral Hackett, your General Tullius or Ulfric Stormcloak, a military man through and through. His word is absolute, and by no other means will he see his goal fulfilled. He fulfills the role of the Emperor Emissary, the one who directs you on your quest. The one who, with all his heart, believes he is right in his ways. And the one who, I would argue, has the most tragic story. From our first encounters with him, his emphasis on the word I becomes especially apparent.
Yes, and I will come straight to the point. You are here because I believe that you are special. Humanity faces a threat that needs to be stopped. And to achieve this, you are indispensable.
For those who have played Enderall, think back on some of the most memorable moments of Telor in the story. Think of how he worded all of his statements. He is the one to break the news of your position of the Prophet Emissary. He is the one to guide you and tell you what to do and how to do it. He is the one to continue to push you and the Holy Order. He alone must be responsible for the saving of humanity. He and no one else. It starts off normal enough. Sure, he might be a bit pushy, but that's his upbringing. And he's working against the grain with his Holy Order, who don't have the visions he does. As time goes on and the cleansing comes closer, Telor becomes more and more obsessed with fulfilling his own goals. He begins to reject counsel by his subordinates. He starts to grasp at whatever options may help finish the beacon faster.
You did well, Prophet. Despite the complications, the mission was a complete success.
A complete success? What in blazes has happened to you, Telor?
Nothing. And now is not the time for quarreling.
Yayla is dead, Telor, just like Jorek. Jorek for the name of the gods. And none of this would have happened if we had just given Quarric this idiotic machine. Please, Telor, if my opinion means anything to you, let go of this madness.
I don't care about your opinion. Jorek was a traitor, and Yayla gave her life for something greater than herself. But the latter in particular seems to be something you cannot relate to. Now, silence. I've had enough of your attempts to hinder our mission.
But he never lets go of the original idea that anyone but him may be allowed to end the cleansing and save humanity.
What? And the same goes for me? That's ridiculous. They wanted to deceive you, to sow discord. I saw the threat the cleansing posed before anyone else did. And without me, we would have never come that far. Something changed inside me since I fled from my prison. I feel it. And it is the same thing that made you a part of all this. Now, enough of this.
It isn't until late in the game that we begin to understand who Telor is, and why he seeks to end the cleansing. The Night of 1,000 Fires, to incredibly briefly summarize, is when Telor led a disastrous peacekeeping operation which led to the slaughter of many innocent civilians. This was all caused by Telor's own fear of messing up the operation and his fear of losing men. His own fear played to the enemy's advantage. This caused him to swear against fear ever influencing him again, something which is directly played against him throughout Enderall. Towards the climax of the story, we learn even more of Telor and his relation with the late mortals turned controversial gods, the Lightborn. Specifically, Lightborn Erlanda, with whom he had a child and left orphaned and without knowledge of his true nature due to him resulting from forbidden love. This left Erlanda depressed, as she was unable to interact with her son, and she later committed suicide, something which Telor undoubtedly blamed himself for, and he swore to make it up to her. This all plays to Telor's tragic hero arc, and in my own opinion, leaves him as the best character in the game.
Erlanda, is that you? I did it. I saved them. Don't you see? I led them to the light. Alone.
Yeah, and I think if you Google Jaspada Varric, I think the first one is Google suggestion that pops up is prevent death or something like that. I think actually the funniest thing I ever read on, I think it might have been Tumblr or Reddit, was basically somebody who Jesper died, they killed Adila, and then he basically, I don't know if he went back to Ark or something, but he dropped alchemy ingredients, flowers and stuff, and he kind of created this kind of, funeral pyre for Jesper and placed flowers all around. And then when he was finally, I think it was a woman, when she was finally able to move on and the veiled woman popped up and resurrected him. It's just really funny.
To move from one pitiable story to another, we now turn our gaze to a fan favorite, Jaspar Dalveric, a go-with-the-flow mercenary who had a troubled childhood and an even more troubled early employment. He is haunted by his past actions and is stuck in a state of running from his past mistakes, similar to Tilor. Though Tilor embraced and resolved to never let fear judge his actions, he resolved never to run. Jaspar is the opposite, instead letting his fear consume him, becoming the perfect result of the shadow philosophy developed by Carl Jung. For those who may not know the shadow philosophy, it's a fairly simple concept. It's the unconscious side to a person, which torments the conscious side over past decisions they regret. In short, we all have a shadow, and the more you are aware of it, the lighter the shadow is as you've come to accept your mistakes. The more you run from them, the denser your shadow is, and the harder the guilt is on you. Jaspar, upon us first meeting him, is consumed by his shadow, referring to those who wish to do good, do it only out of self-interest, to see themselves in a heroic light.
Well, what should I think about it? Yarrow was a self-righteous fool, just like all these do-gooders are. They celebrate themselves as great messiahs as long as everything goes well, but once they fail, it's the bad, bad world that's responsible for it. The wise hermit has a good saying for that. People are only idealists until it starts to hurt. He and his lady should have simply stayed in Riverville.
This view develops over time, as does his view on how to approach those responsibility for his past actions, his inability to act to try to save his lover from bandits, even though he was hopelessly outnumbered. Jaspar's story is told well enough. His voice actor is able to inject appropriate emotion into Jaspar's speech, and the frequency at which we receive updates on his backstory isn't too often or too little. Instead, the gray area comes around at the time at Jaspar's death later in the game, after confronting his sister. While on my first playthrough, I'll admit seeing Jaspar's death was shocking. It made me reload my save, believing I should have jumped out after him, and it even made me emotional. It was joined by a sense of relief when he was revived by the veiled woman. However, looking back on it, I do believe the game might have been enhanced had Jaspar stayed dead. If Jaspar did die and stayed dead, his death would have had a much longer lasting emotional impact than it did. It would have introduced a wild card of mortality into the main cast of characters, and the opportunity to use him as an emotionally manipulative force by the High Ones through dreams is almost too good an opportunity to pass up. Though, credit where credit is due, Sure AI did handle Jaspar's reaction to being revived in a good way. It wasn't something he just blew off and continued on with. The death brought about the classic Dabda model of dealing with death within Jaspar. Jaspar breaks down. He was just brought back from the dead, and the first thing he saw was his own dead sister.
That's my name. But... Adila... What happened? But... I only remember a flash of fire, and then... darkness. Everything's so... blurry. What? But... Okay, I'm sorry, but... this is all just a little too much. Please, just give me some time with my sister, all right? Go back to Ark with that bloody stone. Go anywhere, but please, just leave me alone.
Substance abuse leads him further down his path of running from his past, though the player character's intervention leads to him eventually coming full circle and accepting responsibility for his past actions, thus no longer being weighed down by his shadow.
It's hard to put into words. You know, I still believe what I told you that time we met at the Dancing Nomad. That we all act as we do because we hope it makes us happy. But somehow, in no small part thanks to my father, I've always considered responsibility and being happy to be contradictory. But actually, that's wrong. It's the exact opposite. In order to be truly content, we need connection. To a person, to a cause, to anything. If you never find that, you'll never find yourself.
We've spoken about the specifics of Enderall's story, but what about its grander structure? Does it deliver its story well enough through pacing? Is the player given proper motivation? To put it simply, yes. The pacing in Enderall is done well. The introduction is sped along a little too much, where after you wake up for the first time in Enderall, you perform a small investigation, find a woman, and next thing you know, you're going to join the top dog order in all of Enderall. However, after the intro, the story's pace settles in a happy medium, giving space between main quest missions to allow the player to explore, interact with the supporting cast, and take a breather if they want. It's these small spaces which help create a wonderful atmosphere with which to deliver Enderall's characters and themes. Players are never left without something to do, but they're never pushed into doing the next task. They're allowed to experience the story and world for themselves. The character quests are a terrific example of Enderall's pacing. They are delivered at logical points in the story and give players motivation to actually complete them. They are not drip-fed to the player, to where the player is likely to have forgotten the last conversation, and they're not given too fast, to where it feels like the character is just trying to elicit sympathy for themselves. When, just as far as death occurs, the question, why should I care, never entered my head. The death evoked strong emotions and made me want to push forward in memory of him, even though the death was reversed shortly after. He was given proper time to develop as a character and an ally of the player. Thanks to characters like Kalia, Firespark, and Jaspar, it's hard to not want to try to save them from a fate like the Cleansing. The player's motivation is hardly ever questioned. So, to conclude this review, I think it's important for me to also speak on the conclusion of Enderall. Was Enderall's conclusion effective? Absolutely. Conclusions in Enderall are one of its strongest points, in my opinion. It's where you see the twist.
You asked me once what my daughter's name was. Do you remember?
Ilsa, I beg you, please.
Lena. Her name was Lena.
No. That's impossible.
It's where you see the culmination of everything you've been working for. It's where you're often given a choice, one that can determine the fate of a world or just a person.
I guess it doesn't matter anyway, does it? I don't have much longer. I can feel it. Strange, isn't it? The way life sometimes goes. Here I am, Jaspar Delveric, the man who for once in his life wanted to be part of something good. Man, some great hero I am. But you know what? I don't regret it.
The conclusion is where you get the chance to deliver your own answer for the question you've been asked the entire time you've been in Enderall. Sacrifice yourself to save the world, but perhaps only delay the cycle? Sending your trusted companion forth into the world to warn the other nations about what transpired in Enderall? Or flee with your companion? Run to the city in the sky, the Shangri-La, and live out your days, perhaps guiding the next cycle away from the High Ones and put them on a straight path. These are your answers to the question. These are your outcomes. To give my own opinion on the endings, I truly do find them to be amazing, and they serve to tell a better story than I've experienced in a while. Your work to stop the harvest was futile, and you brought around your own destruction. You were so close, and yet you failed. But it didn't feel like it. Yes, it was sad, and yes, it cut deep watching the souls of everyone slowly rise into the air around you, but there was hope in both endings. It wasn't something that crushed you. I didn't feel let down. I didn't feel like everything I did was pointless, and that it did lead somewhere. However, I would say that Enderall's writers learned a lot when writing the DLC, and I think it's finally time we go to look at it.